HOA Karen called cops on my shooting range. She didn't know I'm outside their authority. Do you know what happens when someone drunk on power runs into the one thing they can't control? I was adjusting the scope on my new long-range rifle when I first heard the yelling. It wasn't my wife. It wasn't even my neighbor. No, it was her. Karen, the self-proclaimed HOA queen, wearing her signature floral sun hat, aviator sunglasses, and a clipboard like it was a badge of law. She stormed onto my land without warning, her heels digging into the gravel like she was invading enemy territory. "I demand you stop this nonsense immediately," she barked, waving her clipboard like it could erase my entire setup. "This is a residential area. You can't just shoot guns here." I kept my voice steady. "This land isn't part of the HOA, ma'am. It's private, unincorporated property. I'm outside your jurisdiction. I even checked with the sheriff's department." Karen snorted like she just heard the most offensive joke in the world. "We'll see what they have to say." She spun on her heel, dialing 911 like she was calling an air support. And that's when I realized she wasn't going to stop until she got her little war. Karen returned 30 minutes later with backup. Blue and red lights flashed behind her as a sheriff's car pulled up to my gate. She was grinning, smug, pointing toward me as if I were a criminal caught red-handed. "That's him. He's firing guns with no permit. He's scaring the neighborhood. He's a danger to us all." The deputy stepped out, gave me a nod, and calmly asked for my paperwork. I handed over the laminated copy of my range license, which had been cleared by both the county and state authorities months ago. Karen's face twitched. The deputy read the paperwork, looked back at her, and then simply said, "Ma'am, he's not in the HOA. This property is outside the HOA jurisdiction. He's not breaking any laws." Karen's jaw dropped like someone had just unplugged her entire operating system. "But Buth's shooting guns. You can't allow that. Think of the children. I suggest you stay off his land," the deputy said, turning back toward his vehicle. Karen was left fuming, standing in a cloud of dust as the patrol car pulled away. But she wasn't done yet. That night, my trail cameras caught her sneaking onto my property. I didn't know it until morning, when I found bullet holes in my shed. My first thought was confusion until I checked the footage. It was Karen, all right, holding a hammer, swinging at targets, slashing bags of soil, muttering to herself about justice and order. That's when I knew I had her. I sent the footage to the sheriff's office and got a case number. But before I could act further, something unexpected happened. My neighbor, Adam, retired military and usually quiet, knocked on my door. "You know she did the same thing to me, right?" he said. "Last year. She trespassed into my backyard during my daughter's birthday and called CPS because she heard us shouting. It was just kids playing." We compared notes, shared footage. Apparently, Karen had a pattern targeting any home outside HOA lines, harassing families using scare tactics. I contacted a local journalist who'd been running a piece on neighborhood harassment. She was more than eager to hear the story. Within days, it exploded online. A video montage of Karen's antics, including my footage, interviews with neighbors, and her yelling at the deputy, went viral. Public comments were brutal. But the twist? Turns out Karen wasn't even an official HOA officer. She had forged her position after the last board stepped down. A real estate attorney confirmed the record. She had appointed herself without a legal vote. Now, not only was she being investigated for vandalism and trespassing, she was also facing fraud charges. Neighbors who once tolerated her started leaving angry notes on her door. HOA members demanded an emergency election. And the sheriff's department issued a restraining order. Karen? She locked herself inside her house for days. The last time I saw her, she was packing boxes into a moving truck, her eyes hollow. All that power she thought she had gone. Her little empire of control collapsed under the weight of truth. And all it took was one camera, one neighbor, and one boundary she shouldn't have crossed. Now I ask you, was this justice served or too far? The weeks after the viral video were chaos, but the kind that finally brought peace. My phone wouldn't stop ringing. Neighbors who I hadn't spoken to in years were calling to say thank you. Turns out, Karen's reign of terror had lasted far longer than I thought. One family had canceled 3 backyard birthday parties over the years because she filed noise complaints before the invitations were even sent out. Another couple had abandoned their chicken coop dreams because Karen reminded them of a poultry ordinance that didn't even exist. The exposure broke something in her. But strangely, it also united us. A town hall meeting was called this time not by Karen. Dozens showed up, some still skeptical, some scared of retaliation, but most just tired of being pushed around. I brought a USB loaded with more footage and a folder of complaints from over 15 residents. When the lawyer representing the HOA stood up and confirmed Karen's self-appointment as president was legally invalid, you could feel the whole room exhale. There was one more twist, though: the land dispute. Karen had submitted multiple complaints to the county zoning office, arguing my shooting range was within HOA reach. But her claims rested on a flawed map, one she had redrawn. The original county zoning documents? Still on record. Still showing the truth. I was completely in the clear. Her false map was labeled evidence tampering. That became the second criminal charge after trespassing and vandalism. Then came impersonating a public official. By the time her court date was announced, local news had picked up the story, branding it the HOA tyrant of Raven Ridge. I didn't coin that phrase, but it stuck. But it wasn't just about revenge. My wife sat across from me one morning, coffee mug in hand, eyes tired. "She ruined more than property, you know?" she whispered. "She made us afraid in our own home." And she was right. The fear Karen planted, fear of being watched, harassed, slander edit, had taken root deeper than I realized. It wasn't just the broken fence or the slash sandbags. It was psychological warfare. I decided to repurpose the shooting range not just for me, but for others. We started offering free firearm safety workshops on weekends. Veterans like Adam volunteered to teach. Parents brought their teens. No politics, no bravado, just empowerment and trust in one another again. Even better, the sheriff's department sent a rep to one of the events. Not in uniform, off duty, as a neighbor. Then came the court hearing. Karen walked in with her hair pulled back tight, wearing a gray blazer that didn't quite fit. She looked smaller, not physically, but everything about her posture. Her gazette lacked the fire and arrogance she had always worn like armor. The judge read out the charges: vandalism, trespassing, falsifying documents, fraud, impersonation of authority. When the prosecutor played the surveillance footage of her smashing my targets while muttering about order, she closed her eyes. She pled no contest to most charges. The rest? Guilty. The sentence wasn't jail, though she narrowly avoided it. Instead, it was a combination of restitution, mandatory therapy, community service, and a 5-year restraining order. She had to pay for the damage, resign from all HOA involvement permanently, and could no longer initiate contact with any of the victims. She also lost her job. Her license as a real estate agent was suspended when the fraud charges went public. Clients fled. Reviews tanked. Her reputation crumbled like the fence she tried to tear down. I walked past her on the way out of the courtroom. She didn't look at me, but she whispered, just loud enough for me to hear, "I just wanted people to listen." I stopped, not because I felt sympathy but because I realized something deeper. Karen didn't start off evil. She started off lonely, desperate for control. And over time, that desperation twisted into something toxic, something dangerous. But that didn't excuse what she did. It only explained it. 1 month later, the neighborhood felt different. Kids played outside again. Flags flew on porches. People waved at each other. Someone even started a community garden where the old HOA sign used to be. I walked by the spot one afternoon and noticed something new. A wooden board nailed to a fresh post. Written in black marker. No kings, no queens, just neighbors. I didn't put it there. Neither did Adam. No one knows who did. But it stayed. And it said everything. 3 weeks after the court hearing, the mailbox in front of Karen's old house stood empty. The windows were boarded. The garden, once obsessively trimmed, was overgrown, with weeds poking defiantly through cracked paving stones. A "For Sale by Owner" sign was jammed into the lawn. Crooked. Faded. No one wanted it. I passed by every day on my way to the range. Not out of spite. Not even curiosity. More like closure. Like watching the final ember of a long-burning fire slowly die out. But then came a letter. Folded in half, slid under my front door. There was no envelope. Just a lined sheet of paper, torn from a notebook. You won. But not everyone will be like you. Some of us only wanted order because we lived in chaos. I'm sorry, Kay. I sat with that for a while. My wife read it, said nothing, just nodded. We didn't talk about it again. Because we both knew it wasn't really about winning. It was about finally being heard. The community changed. At the next town meeting, a new face stood at the podium. A teacher named Mariah. Young, driven, and kind. She had lived in the neighborhood for 2 years, but never dared attend a meeting while Karen ruled. Now, she proposed something that made the whole room pause. A code of kindness. Not a rule book. Not another set of HOA laws. Just a shared commitment voluntary to be good to one another. A community charter rooted in respect, support, and listening. People clapped. Not because it was dramatic, but because it was real. Even the skeptics who once enabled Karen looked down, embarrassed, and then quietly signed their names. Change doesn't always roar in like thunder. Sometimes it whispers, and that whisper spreads. Back on the range, Adam and I were training 2 young moms who had never held a rifle in their lives. One had tears in her eyes. I used to be afraid of this stuff, she said. Now, I feel safer knowing I can defend my kids. Not with fear but with knowledge. Adam nodded, soft-voiced. Fear is how they keep you small. Awareness makes you free. The irony wasn't lost on me. Karen had tried to make us small, to erase our rights, our confidence, our peace. And all it took was her own downfall to wake the neighborhood up. Twist uncovered. A few days later, a local reporter contacted me. She had been digging into Karen's background for a podcast episode. What she found was unexpected. Years ago, Karen had been married to a city official in a nearby district. There were public records divorce, restraining orders, even a failed lawsuit where she tried to seize property she didn't own. Her obsession with rules started as a survival mechanism in that toxic relationship. But over time, it turned into a weapon she used on everyone else. The podcast episode was titled, "The HOA Queen Who Fell Off Her Throne," and it ended with a single line that still haunts me. Control wasn't her power, it was her prison. I didn't know how to feel. She had hurt so many people, but she had also been hurt. Still, redemption requires remorse and repair, not just regret. The last confrontation. 6 months after the incident, I saw her again. I was at a county fair, checking out a local booth for homemade honey. When I saw the familiar posture-stiff shoulders, arms clutching a purse tightly, eyes darting. Karen. No hat, no clipboard, just Karen. She didn't see me right away. But when she did, her eyes didn't narrow in fury. They dropped. She walked toward me, slowly, carefully. "I'm not here to fight," she said. Her voice was dry, tired. "I just wanted you to know I left the state. I only came back to sell the house. I waited. I've been trying. Therapy, classes. I don't expect forgiveness. But I needed you to know I'm not pretending anymore." There was a long silence. Then I said, "Good, because pretending was what caused all this." She nodded, bit her lip, walked away. That was the last time I saw her. Epilogue: a new chapter. The HOA eventually voted to dissolve and rebrand as a neighborhood association. No dues, no power trips, just community cookouts, lawn tool swaps, and an open garden fund. The old rulebook was burned literally at the block party. Adam now teaches youth firearm safety at the local YMCA. Mariah runs a weekly neighbor hour, where people come share concerns, get advice, or just be seen. As for me, I still shoot, still maintain the range. But now, there's a new wooden board beside the fence. This land stays free because we stood up. And underneath it, smaller in hand-carved lettering, no more tyrants in sun hats. So, I'll leave you with this. What do we do with those who cross the line? Do we crush them? Forgive them? Or make sure they never get the chance to do it again? Where's the line between justice and revenge?